British soldiers stepped through the wire gates. Rotting bodies lay everywhere. On the 15th of April 1945, veterans of the British 11th Armored Division stopped their advance. They had liberated French towns. The stench of human decay hit them immediately. Men vomited on the dirt. Bergen-Belsen was originally built to hold 10,000 inmates. Now it held 60,000 starving survivors and 13,000 unburied dead under the open sky. These troops had fought across Europe without breaking. Here, they wept. They wept at the sheer absurdity of the camp guards. Women in pristine SS uniforms remained standing among the corpses, casually holding their whips. These female guards standing among the dead appeared in the camps due to a direct manpower shortage. Where did the SS get thousands of women? The answer was simple economics. Men went to the front lines. The state needed camp staff, and the leadership began a mass hiring campaign. Between 1939 and 1945, the SS recruited 3,700 civilian women. They walked into local recruitment offices. They signed employment contracts printed on standard government paper. The ink on those documents granted them a new official title. They became Aufseherinnen, female overseers. Most had no political background. They were former farmhands, shop clerks, and factory workers seeking an escape from poverty. What drew them in was not ideology. It was a steady salary and a heated room. The basic monthly pay for an overseer exceeded 100 Reichsmarks, a major step up for a former maid. Food rationing had governed Germany since 1939, making groceries increasingly scarce across the entire country. A guaranteed SS food ration became a critical advantage. Women secured regular meat and butter just by putting on a uniform. After signing the paperwork, the new recruits packed their bags. They boarded trains and traveled to the Ravensbrück camp for a short training course. The curriculum lasted only a few weeks. Instructors taught them how to manage roll calls, conduct searches, and issue physical punishments. The main lesson of Ravensbrück left no room for doubt. Prisoners were enemies of the state and no longer qualified as human beings. Graduates carrying this conviction received assignments to Bergen-Belsen, a facility originally established in 1940 strictly for prisoners of war. 60,000 emaciated people found themselves crammed into a territory calculated for a few thousand inmates. This population of 60,000 matched an average European town, but these masses were locked inside a handful of wooden barracks originally built for a small garrison. As Allied troops advanced during 1945, the SS command evacuated eastern camps and drove survivors westward through death marches. The local infrastructure collapsed under the pressure. Clean drinking water simply vanished. Then, typhus struck the camp. The infection killed prisoners who were already starving and sleeping stacked upon each other across the cold floors. 35,000 deaths resulted from the typhus outbreak in just a few months. The surviving inmates lacked the physical strength to move the accumulating corpses. The bodies left on the ground numbered 35,000. Among the unburied dead, the female guards established a daily routine of strict physical control. An overseer unleashes her trained dog on a fallen inmate for moving too slowly. The animal acts as a deliberate weapon against the exhausted, not as a tool for protection. Whips and heavy batons struck those who failed to maintain rigid posture. One wrong glance brought fists. Guards simply withheld food. The daily punishment extended directly into the mandatory roll calls. Starving inmates stood outside without moving for several hours. Winter temperatures in the Lower Saxony region often dropped below 0 degrees Celsius. This violence remained entirely public. It happened openly across the crowded campgrounds. These female supervisors operated with complete confidence in their authority. They held a firm belief that the SS regime was permanent. That belief in a permanent regime vanished on April 15, 1945. In spring, these women stood over prisoners with whips. By September 17, 1945, 45 defendants occupied the courtroom dock in Lüneburg. British troops arrested the remaining staff upon liberation. The trial turned anonymous camp terror into specific legal charges. 240 survivors took the witness stand. Over 2 months, this meant a continuous flow of testimonies, averaging 4 people every single day. Months after the events, witnesses remembered the precise moments and the specific blows. They pointed directly at faces in the courtroom. They matched names to individual acts of cruelty. The accused attempted to build a legal shield. They claimed ignorance. They invoked military duty. But the defense of following orders collapsed under the weight of testimonies. The collapsed defense left 45 individuals facing direct accountability, and reporters consistently focused on 3 specific women among them. 22 years. That was the exact age of Irma Grese when she actively determined who would perform forced labor and who would walk into the gas chambers. She stood during the selections at Auschwitz, raising her hand and pointing her finger either left or right to direct the prisoners. Irma Grese was born in 1923, meaning her entire adolescence developed within the strict educational framework of the Third Reich. She learned her methods at Ravensbrück before bringing them to Bergen-Belsen, where survivors recalled her beating women for simply whispering or limping. Elisabeth Volkenrath held direct administrative authority over the female compound during the deadliest months of the camp. She managed the daily operations of the sector, overseeing the physical collapse of the facilities, while demonstrating indifference and occasionally encouraging the violence. Johanna Bormann enforced discipline through a highly specific method across multiple concentration camps. She stood in front of defenseless prisoners and released her trained dog on command, letting the animal tear into the victims. Many prisoners suffered severe wounds from these animal attacks, and a significant number of them did not survive the injuries. During the proceedings in Lüneburg, the testimonies established their daily routines, yet the women offered no remorse. Johanna Bormann smiled while listening to witnesses describe her actions, a reaction the court carefully recorded. When the judges finally delivered their verdicts, Irma Grese maintained eye contact with the bench and gave a single, slight nod. The British court delivered a final count that included 8 men and these 3 women. 11 death sentences. The paper verdicts required physical execution. British hangman Albert Pierpoint walked into Hameln prison holding only his specific weight calculations for the gallows. The date was the 13th of December, 1945. Pierpoint brought no ceremony. Over his career, this executioner carried out more than 400 death sentences. He measured height. He checked weight. He finalized the exact length of the hemp rope. Irma Grese went first. She wore a standard prison uniform instead of her SS attire. She stepped onto the wooden scaffold. The women maintained complete silence before the execution. No words, no requests, no begging for mercy. Grese faced the rough rope with total stillness. Pierpoint secured the binding. He placed the white hood. The heavy lever dropped. She was 22 years old. Elisabeth Volkenrath followed her immediately. The procedure repeated without hesitation. She climbed the wooden steps, stood on the chalk mark, and met her end without a single emotion. Johanna Bormann came third. Her courtroom smirks had disappeared entirely. She died just as quietly. The guards brought each prisoner into the chamber separately. 7 men walked the same path after the 3 women. The British military protocol operated smoothly. These former guards previously commanded complete power over thousands of starving lives. Reality delivered a sharp contrast. That vast authority turned into a total loss of personal control within a single hour. Pierpoint pulled the metal lever one last time. The 10th condemned body dropped through the open trap door. Those 10 executions at Hameln masked the fate of 3,000 other female guards. The court handed down death sentences to a few, while thousands dissolved among the refugees. Over 85% faced 0 legal consequences. Out of 3,700 overseers, fewer than 500 stood trial. Women unbuttoned their heavy SS tunics, dropped them on the floor, and pulled on ordinary civilian dresses. By May 1945, millions of displaced persons wandered across Germany, creating ideal conditions for a total identity change. Former guards joined the endless lines. They requested new identity documents. They became different people. Even the convicted often walked away quickly. Hildegard Leckert stood out for her documented violence at Bergen-Belsen. A military tribunal handed her a 15-year sentence, but she walked free by the mid-1950s. The rest never saw a courtroom. Thousands of former overseers quietly returned to everyday civilian life. The courtroom missed thousands of them, but their actions remained firmly locked in the photographic evidence and survivor testimonies. In the spring of 1945, black and white reels from Bergen-Belsen became the first global proof of the Nazi operations, and today, a solemn memorial occupies the exact ground of those demolished wooden structures. The process of documentation bypassed the failing judicial reach. Allied cameras captured the mass graves, sending stark images of skeletal survivors and endless fields of the dead across international borders. These specific visual records circulated through global newspapers, stripping the anonymity from the female overseers who thought their civilian clothes would hide their past. The physical infrastructure of the camp was burned down to stop the spread of typhus. Yet, the destruction of the barracks could not erase the historical footprint of the crimes. The detailed testimonies of the survivors built an unassailable archive of the daily operations. Every recorded interview and every compiled memoir transferred the events from personal trauma into verified historical facts. The names of the victims are now engraved on stone monuments across the site. The documented evidence outlasted the perpetrators and the architecture they commanded. Today, the wind blows across the same quiet, empty clearings where British soldiers first halted their jeeps.